The hybrid work model has seen much evolution in its offering as well as the decision making for it. What are the key trends we're seeing, and is it here to stay? You're watching Savills Shares. Welcome to Savills Shares. We're diving into the universe of hybrid work landscape today, and we have Piers Mallitte, head of Workthere APAC Savills, with us today. Welcome.
Thanks, Jack. Great to be here.
Well, for people who are not familiar with Workthere, what is Workthere?
It's a great question. One I get asked a lot. So obviously Workthere is the serviced office division of Savills. We've been running since 2017, and ultimately we are a one-stop shop for flex, and that primarily includes office brokerage as well as flex portfolio services. So those two service lines. So ultimately, if you're a tenant, you've got 10, 20 locations globally. Whether you're a tenant and you've got locations in 10, 20 different markets. From one desk to 10 desks, it doesn't matter. We will do market reports. We've got local bums on the seats in 11 countries, as well as all the other Savills resource globally. So we will go to market. We will negotiate best rates, best spaces. We've got relationships with every single operator globally. That is just a market standard. It is an open forum for brokers and agents. And that's kind of the main job. The second part, which we really have grown significantly over the last 3 years, is our flex portfolio management service line. And that is managing, so not just delivering one-off projects for occupiers, but it is managing their global portfolio. And we do this for a number of large clients now. They might have an office in Auckland, Montreal, South America, wherever. And you'll have one dedicated account manager who will be your go-to for flex.
Right.
So whether that's looking at a new location, stay versus go, a renewal negotiation, or a consolidation of, if you've got 3 offices around the UK and you want one spot. And that's kind of tip of the iceberg of what we do. But ultimately, again, I think we're a one-stop shop for flex. That is the main message of what Workthere does.
Okay, and if I can crystallize it in the Singapore context, if I'm a company who has X number of employees whom I want to adopt a hybrid work arrangements, I can then come to you and say, I want 5 desks in Ang Mo Kio, 2 desks in the CBD, and 6 desks in Toa Payoh, and you can help me find those spaces accordingly. Is that right?
Definitely. Yeah.
Great.
Exactly that.
So is this hybrid work arrangement something that's here to stay, given that the pandemic is somewhat under control?
So it's funny, I was reading last week that pre-COVID, a general study, I will caveat saying, that they estimated that 10% of the global workforce were remote workers. Obviously, during COVID, you fast forward, almost 2/3 of the globe were remote. And now there's not real statistics yet on it, but I think the working, especially the hybrid model of working, it's definitely here to stay. I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's going to be a synergy between kind of back to work, back in the office, as well as, employers offering a day or 2 from home. I think that's where we're going to end up, which is no, bad thing. You've got some major tech firms, Amazon, mandating employees 5 days in the office now. And then you've also got Google, who I think a minimum of 3. So there is that return to office mandate, which is being pushed primarily, funnily enough, from the US. And if you dive deeper into that, you're looking more at US tech firms. They want people in the office to collaborate, to socialize.
Mm.
You're working remotely, especially fully remotely.
Mm.
You probably lose a bit of your spark, and you definitely, depending on industry, you won't develop as much
Mm.
as you would being in the office.
But I mean, if, it's funny you say that about collaboration because a lot of these workspaces now that offers flexible options do include facilities for collaboration.
They do, and I think that that's why flex is perceived a lot as a competition to traditional lease space, whereas it's just not the case. Flex is supposed to be an extension of a company's kind of real estate arsenal, so to speak. It's supposed to be a tool to adapt, overcome, especially when you're entering new markets and you don't want to go and take a fixed lease. That's where flex shines, and that is where it will continue to shine. And you've got to remember, serviced offices were around a lot longer than just COVID. You've got some operators such as Serve Corp, IWG, International Workplace Group, who've been around for donkey's years, and they still do what they do, and they're still growing. So I think the main point of especially occupiers utilizing flex is going to be how they do it, where they do it, and the type of work they're doing. It's all dependent on that.
I guess really COVID really put a spotlight on flex, so to speak.
Definitely, and there's no argument there. I think the rise of flex, obviously what was happening globally was devastating. But for our industry, especially the flex industry, it 100% came into the spotlight. You had companies, if they were lucky enough to have lease expiries, they could get out of their space pre-COVID or even mid-COVID and then go into a flex hybrid model. Another tool which companies are using globally are global desk passes. And there's a couple of companies that do this now. You've got Gable, and then those are kind of the third-party independent providers. Ultimately, what they do and what companies such as Microsoft, Elastic, Nike have all adapted to and onboarded now. They're offering a remote workforce access to 10,000 plus locations at the touch of a button, and that's amazing. That is new tech. It's a big project to dive into, but one that I would completely ensure, and we do with our clients, advise them to make them aware of it, because it is something which could be a cost saving, not taking a physical asset, but if you are looking to launch in country, take a virtual office, use this program to start off with, and then grow from there.
So, I mean, which markets within the APAC region are you seeing the strongest demand for flexible workspaces solution, and what factors are influencing these trends?
I think the APAC market, you probably hear chatter about the same few cities. So India is one to definitely touch on. So Bangalore, or otherwise known as Bengaluru, post 2014, they have an immense market there, and they're looking at just the flex market. You've got the likes of Wayfair, Bank of Australia, and a few others who are taking not just a couple hundred desks in flex in India. They're taking 1,000 desks, 3,000 desks, and I think the main reason Bangalore is growing at such an aggressive rate is one, the demand, and probably the name of kind of becoming the global IT hub. Access to workforce is fantastic. We've got a couple of clients who have opened GCCs in Bangalore, so global capability centers. And again, Amazon, etc., they all utilize these programs. It's easy to set up because of how efficient those guys are on the ground. They can 100,000 square foot location Give them 3 to 6 months and it will be fully fitted and ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
So they can mobilize at a seriously impressive rate. So in short, Bangalore, because of it's a global IT hub and the attraction for GCCs to function, operate, grow, get workforce in quickly, it's impressive. So that's factors for India and Bangalore, and that is such a separate market to what the rest of APAC looks like. It is so unique. So to give you a good statistic, so the Singapore office market sits at about, I think, just under 90 million square foot total. Bangalore alone in 2025 is looking to gain 20 million square foot of office space.
Wow.
I mean, you're talking scales of, it's just unbelievable. And other cities as well, Delhi, NCR, Mumbai, Pune, they're all growing very quickly and they will soon take over definitely as other hubs. Another market to watch is definitely Sydney. They've got a very impressive range of workplace out there. That comes from serviced offices to traditional lease space, as well as some managed offerings. And we're definitely seeing an uptick in demand there. I think other cities outside of Sydney, Melbourne, there's been some growth, not huge. And Perth is obviously dominated by the mining industry out there. So again, you've got some very big kind of headquarters for those businesses, but not so much on the east.
Are flexible workspace provider incorporating essential elements of the traditional offices?
I primarily talk about the Singapore market here. So the Singapore market is one which is formidable. It is competitive. It is ever evolving as well. I think what's interesting is, so to answer your question directly, I bizarrely think it's tenants who are in traditional leases are utilizing the collaboration space in flex spaces in their building. A very good prime example of this is, so in MBFC, Marina Bay Financial Centre, there's 3 towers there. You've got a lot of traditional lease occupiers. You've got Base, Regis, Servcorp and TC, all in those buildings. And you'd be very surprised how often other tenants are utilizing their meeting rooms, their auditoriums. Even if they've got colleagues over from different countries, they'll go and use the hot desk areas if need be.
Why do you think that is? Is it a matter of supply?
Again, I think these companies are smart. They're doing what Flex was made to do, was to be a complement. And Flex is almost going past that now, where it is its own industry. We've got enough players now, especially in Singapore, and probably dominated by top 5. I think that the Singapore marketplace is going to get even more competitive. It is a flight to quality and a fight for best in class space. There's the vacancy rates in Singapore are pretty small. So those operators, as soon as there's an opportunity in the market, especially when most of the opportunities are owned by landlords who have ties to each operator, it becomes a race. Who's going to put what on the line, what type of arrangement, whether it's a management agreement or a direct lease. So there's different avenues to consider.
And if I'm choosing between a traditional office or a flexible workspace itself, what are some considerations I should bear in mind?
Again, of course, depending on really size, it can be one or the other. To consider Flex as your office, you are either new to market, you have an agile workforce where you're on rota 3 days a week, 2 days a week, whatever it may be, or you are expecting significant growth over the next 12, 24 months. I think the main difference of, especially what I'm used to in London, is lease terms in London. Generally, you're looking at between 5-10 years with breaks at 3 and so on. But Singapore, you can do a traditional lease for 2, 3, 5 years. So the appeal of Flex is not the same as it is in London.
Mm.
So I'd say unless you are looking to, really have a return to work mandate of a minimum 3 days a week, or you just want a base, and again, it's down to financials of each individual
Mm.
country, what image they're trying to send, and if they really care about having that physical space.
Mm.
So many companies, if you go online, you can look at how many companies are registered as virtual offices in Singapore,
Mm.
and they probably have one person here,
Mm.
and the rest is either in Malaysia, Thailand, Philippines, India. So there's different avenues. I think for the traditional lease market is fantastic as well. Obviously, for flex, you pay a premium because it is all rolled up into one.
Mm.
I'd say the main consideration, and what we've seen very recently, for traditional companies or larger corporates, I'll call them, moving to flex, is there generally is no capex cost,
Mm.
which, unlike traditional, where you have to go and fit out your space
Yes.
yourselves, that is a huge saving. And how it works with flex operators, once you go in, it's all fitted ready. If you want any amendments, any partitions, glass, whatever you want to go up, they will just amortize that cost over the course of your term. So, you got head of finance in another country looking at it saying, great, there's no upfront costs. And then even the OPEX is also rolled in. So the benefit of flex is you've got one monthly sum, and that is all you need to worry about. It's 24-hour access. They'll give you cleaners. Some have gyms, sport facilities, cafes. You've got everything in one place, which is why there's such an attraction to flex.
I guess there's pros and cons for both options. It's just depending on your needs.
Totally. And that's why we do what we do. And there's no bias, it's not like we are pushing one person to flex, one person to lease. We give them all options on the table.
Well, with the competition growing so much in the flexible workspace, how does Workthere differentiate itself in the market?
I think obviously being a separate brand, and not Savills Flex, for example, but having the Workthere brand gives us that separate identity, which I think big corporates appreciate, that Savills has a flex division. Equally, if you're a small startup and you're looking at a 5 to 10 person office, you don't want some big corporate potentially representing you. So it gives us that freedom to not be more casual, but can be slightly more informal than the traditional kind of brokerage that Savills offers. But again, you got best of both, and we'll always allow that. I think that the other benefit is obviously being tied to Savills. There's the big five out there, big five real estate firms. They all have an aspect of flex within their business. And that's a huge selling point for us. We've got access to some very large tenants very quickly. Unlike some of our competitors who can't vault them, some of them have done incredibly well being independent. And there are also, as we said, pros and cons to both. But I think because we are part of Savills, the resources we have available, we offer flex services, but we can do traditional leasing in nearly every single global market, whether that's with Savills teams on the grounds or local affiliates. So another USP of Workthere is, having access to the Savills resource. And it shocks, especially a lot of the tenants we speak to and occupiers that we deliver to, is, Savills is a business. We've got 700 plus offices globally, 40 plus thousand employees globally. And I think recently, over about 300 service lines, which is a massive resource for our occupiers to take advantage of. The other very big advantage of Workthere specifically for tenants looking for flex spaces, we take our fees from landlords. So all of our occupied clients, if you're a tenant looking for space, we are technically a free service to you. There are no fees due there. It is the flex operators and landlords that cover our fees,
Right.
which again is a huge kind of bang on the drum, because everyone thinks there's costs associated, and don't get me wrong, that is just flex.
Mm,
So obviously with traditional markets,
mm,
every market varies. In Singapore, for relocations, landlords pay our fee, but for flex, it's a free service.
excellent.
Yeah,
Not
it's a good sell.
yeah, not many things out there that are free these days.
Well, exactly, free.
Except love and fresh air. Now let's talk sustainability since we're talking about fresh air. It is an increasing priority for businesses, and many co-working providers promote their ESG credentials. How do you guide clients towards more sustainable workspace choices? And do you see ESG factors influencing leasing decisions in APAC?
Every single occupier has their own ESG targets, of what they want to achieve. And especially in markets like Singapore, where it is ESG sustainability is a huge growing part of what we're doing and what we're advising. And obviously Savills focusing on that ESG and sustainability advisory piece globally, is growing. We've got the Savills Earth team based out of the UK, which I think was our fastest growing service line last year. I think it went from almost kind of 10, 20 to 100 plus. And that kind of shows you the demand we're getting. In terms of Singapore, ESG sustainability, it's really tied between the operator and the landlord here. And so you're going to hear more about green leases and what that looks like. Again, that is not my niche, so I will probably let you cover that in another session. But so landlords and tenants, and a green lease, by the way, is a traditional lease where there are clauses included, which are sustainability targets and how both the tenant and landlord can work together on achieving them. It's in there from the beginning, and there's some great case studies of how successful this has been, because it also doesn't just put the emphasis on the landlord having to deliver, but it is the tenant and landlord hand in hand trying to achieve these targets. You've got operators who, they'll do their recycling, be green energy where possible, in these spaces, and that always helps tick boxes. But ultimately, in other markets, newer buildings is where they'll see the most benefit. Obviously, carbon credits is another huge part of that sustainability drive, and there's multiple companies out there, but that is something that they will have to organize separately.
But looking ahead, what do you think are some of the biggest opportunity and challenges in the flexible workspace sector in APAC?
I think there's huge opportunity for the sector. You're seeing growth you're seeing operators from all areas really. So for example, the Work project, based out of Singapore here, they have just opened their first location in London, which is a huge international move, and I don't think many saw that coming. And again, it just shows that the demand and willingness to grow. You got SmartWorks, who are an Indian managed co-working space, and they acquired the Singapore cloud business, and they had 2 locations in Singapore, both at about 60-70% occupancy, and they took it on. And again, they're willing to grow. They've just opened up, or we're about to open up, a new building on Shenton Way in Singapore, near Tanjong Pagar, which could be a very interesting space. And then, you've got the existing operators such as TC, the Executive Centre, the Great Room, Justco, who are all fighting for growth and are all fighting for best-in-class spaces in major markets. Justco just launched their collective offering, which is kind of their premium, probably competition to the Executive Centre and the Great Room type of space. But Justco, again, 20 locations in Singapore, 40 plus across APAC now. They're showing significant growth and also demand for other areas within APAC, new markets.
So what advice would you give to businesses looking to optimize their workspace strategy in today's dynamic real estate market, particularly the flexible workspace?
The advice I'd give is open your eyes to everything.
Mm.
Flex it's not complicated, but there's just a lot of services and products you can utilize. There's a dozen different products which could be useful to you. And I think until you really drive down on what your return to work policy is, how many people you really going to get into the office, what amenities do you have, it's hard to give that advice straight off the bat without really understanding a client's portfolio. And this is where I was saying about these global desk pass operators. They also offering this service where you can monitor which locations employees are going to, and then those companies are utilizing the data and saying, well, look, 56% of our team are going to around this location. Let's get an office there. So it's those analytics which are just going to help them to kind of future-proof their real estate strategy.
Well, Piers, if you're given a chance to go back in time and speak to your 21-year-old self, which isn't that far back, what would you say to him back then?
The advice I'd give to my 21-year-old self, which it really isn't that long ago, is don't take no for an answer. I think it's such a big lesson in life, and I've had a lot of no's, and an old manager used to target us, on a BD outreach. It's great to get a yes, of course, but it was called the no game, and the task was to try and go out and get as many no's as possible. And very interestingly, and at the time you're thinking, oh God, okay, you just want us to make 1,000 calls and just hit our actual call target. But what happened was, and it was probably the biggest learning curve for me, was people saying no and getting used to that rejection so often. You have people say X, Y, Z over the phone, hang up. You very quickly learn what the right approach is, wrong approach is. And it builds resilience. And that is like the biggest thing I've taken away from my younger self, because I was an estate agent in London. It was a difficult journey. It was an interesting and new experience. I didn't go to university. I went straight into the workforce at 18. And so it kind of resilience, the no game. And I think just keeping your head up, life is not bad. And I think as long as you kind of go into things with a positive attitude and don't consider the worst case scenarios, you've got nothing to be scared of, nothing to worry about. And again, if they say no, it's a lesson. Move on to the next one.
That's so fascinating. It's really about what you do with the no's, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, totally. The no's of what you receive in life through not just professionally, personally, all that rejection. It's how you take it in your stride, and how ultimately you grow professionally and personally.
Well, thank you so much, Piers, for your time today. We really learned a lot about the flexible workspace sector from you.
Good.
And we hope that you'll come back and tell us more, maybe in about a year's time again, to see how things have changed.
Definitely.
And thank you for joining us as well on Savills Shares. You can catch all these episodes on season 1 and 2 on YouTube Music as well as Spotify. And do follow us as well. Till the next one, God bless. This podcast is for general information only and should not be taken as professional advice. Savills accept no responsibility or liability for any direct or indirect or any consequential loss from the use of, reference to, or the reliance on this podcast or its content.